What is up, guys? Clay Enjoyer here, and it's time to enjoy. And in this video, I'm combining Santa and Rambo to make an unholy abomination named one of a couple things. Either Santa or Santo Claus or Sambo Claus. I'm not really sure, but we're just gonna say Bob, I guess. So I can start making Bob in this typical pose, which is always how I usually start my sculptures, but for this pose in particular, I'm actually going to change it, because I had a different idea than the one I have at the final shots. This one, I wanted him to hold a block of coal and looking at it like a philosopher, but honestly, I felt that didn't really fit super well, so I'm going to change it up later. But for now, the process is still the same. It's just smoothing out the clay and building up layers so it looks humanoid-esque, before, of course, adding the obnoxious shoulders. Because if I'm making Santa or Rambo, they both need obnoxious shoulders and some obnoxious arm muscles to go along with it. Because of course, if you have giant shoulder muscles, it would look pretty weird if you just didn't have any arm muscles at all. But I actually wanted to attempt to do this accurately, so I was trying to blend a little bit more smoothly, at least with the biceps and triceps. But the forearms, it's still kind of a bit iffy, but just don't look at the forearms and then I think it'll look a-okay. And after I finish cutting up the shoulders to make them look more like actual shoulders, I can start making the shoes. And even though the shoes do kind of look like elf shoes because they just look like giant circles, I'm actually trying a bit here by adding flaps to the shoes, and then of course the knots for the shoes and the treads, because for some reason I felt like I wanted to actually try a bit more making the shoes this time instead of just going for close enough. And at least for a work in progress, I think it looks a little bit closer to hiking / military boots. But of course, tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. Don't worry, I swear I'm not comment baiting. But I can make some pants with this Santa Rambo. Bob definitely does need pants, because this is a family-friendly channel and there's nothing of bad stuff. But I do need to make some wrinkles though, because anyway, all pants have wrinkles, and for that matter, every piece of clothing ever has. But I did want to give these pants a little bit more variation, so instead of just cutting into the clay with the ball stylus, I can also blend in some worms to make the clothing look more three-dimensional and a bit less flat, before working on some of the chest muscles, which is going to be covered by a shirt. That's why I didn't do a whole lot of defining, but only just surface level, because I'm going to be covering it up with this tank top with the edges blended in right now, because I don't want to just have to make the stomach and the abs and the obliques, because that's going to be a lot more work. And like on a regular basis, all my videos are kind of getting out later than I continually expect, and some of that is to my own fault, but not entirely. I'm just gonna blame this one on the fact that it's Christmas and I do actually have a family. Anyway, with that out of the way, I can start making the belt, which is pretty simple. It's just a wrap of clay around the pants, duh. But I'm actually going to add a little bit more detail to this as well, as if it's not a theme for the whole sculpture. The little belt loops and an actual belt buckle. Don't worry, I am aware that that belt buckle is not centered right now. Don't worry, I'll definitely fix it later. But because this is Rambo, he needs a giant machine gun-esque thing, which is what I'm starting to make right now, with all of the square and angular gun-esque parts. Then again, I was kind of basing this off of one of his posters, but then again, also part of it was just, what kind of looks like a belt-fed gun? Yes, I am aware that was pretty cringe. I'm gonna leave that in anyway. Followed by a rail rack for attachments like a flashlight or something. Again, of course, I'm going off of video games, and I assume that's what they're for, followed by muzzle, I think. I know, I'm sorry, there's going to be so many people that are going to be like threatening me in the comments for all of the gun anatomy parts that I've gotten wrong. I'm just saying, I don't care, it's just close enough to me, in my opinion. But I can also then make the bullet ejector thing, where a belt would go into the gun, but it's just no belt right now, because I don't feel like making a belt. And if I was to put it on the sculpture, I don't know if I would want the belt to just be sitting there, or like flowing in the wind or something. But I decided that this looks good enough anyway, and I hope that you guys agree too. But I don't want to attach it yet, because it's gonna break if I put it in the oven now, because the weight of the gun will knock it down when it's baking in the oven. So instead, I can make a little pouch that could be for a knife or ammo or just something that I'm gonna put onto Bob's side. Originally, I was gonna have that pouch holding the machete, but it turns out I'm actually going to make the Bob hold the machete. So this could just be an empty holster, or just holding other weapons or something like that. Because I didn't really think this part out, I was just adding detail, and something that I really need to add detail to is the head, which I was basing off of Rambo and then adding Santa-like features probably. But then again, I also might just paint the head to look more like Santa with a red bandana or something and like blonde hair. But I gotta worry about that later, because right now I gotta fix him because he looks a bit too much like a troll, followed by adding cheekbones, which do look a little funky, but I swear it's gonna look kind of normal in a second. I just have to reshape them a bit because they make him look like a young child instead of a tough, grizzled man. Followed by a nose, because Bob has to smell, obviously. And if a normal person had a giant hole in their face, I'd be a little confused too. I don't know about you, at least. But with blending that in, and then I can add in the cigarette or cigar that's gonna be in Bob's mouth. Then again, this is all in the rule of cool rather than actually lore accurate Santa. Before then, carving on his bandana, which is again a strip of clay around his entire head, obviously, like the belt but for his waist instead of his head. And I can give him a bunch of hair. I did this off camera because I figured this was gonna be very annoying, but I did want to detail and blend some of it back into his head, so I hope you guys kinda understand the basic idea of what I was trying to do. Before then, also making an ear, because some of the hair covers the one side of his head, but not the other. So if you can see in that little clip, which I guess you can't, I did end up making an ear, so it wouldn't look weird if you were seeing that angle. Or at the very least, I tried to make an ear, because now that I look at it, what on earth is that? But anyway, I can make a neck slab for the head to go on top of, because obviously human beings have necks, which would look kind of weird if I just put the head straight onto the top of the torso. And when I put it in place, then I can blend it in place so it's a little bit more secure and add some neck details. I'm not entirely sure what those are, but I assume it's like muscle slash voice box, I think. Again, I don't know anatomy, I'm just sculpting what it looks like, followed by the hands, which this one, it looks like it's holding a baton, but don't worry, it's actually holding that machete I mentioned from earlier. I just didn't really know how to start building it, so I figured I'll just start working on the hand and the fingers and then the pads on the hands, because again, I'm trying to add in more detail, followed by the blade. Since the blade was pretty easy to make, I can already attach it to Bob's hand, which is nothing special, it's just a little pressure and blending it in. It definitely didn't fall off in the oven, but now I can start working on Bob's sack. Wait a second, no. Bob's body bag, I swear. because I need him to have this being dragged behind him, because I want to add a little bit of extra detail and something for Bob's left hand to hold, with a little bit of this scrunched up fabric placed on the front of the hand. I can make it look like Bob is holding the bag with all his strength, because in this bag there's going to be the Grinch being dragged in it, followed by painting, which is pretty easy. It's just silver with black and silver and gray, which I know that the gun does look kind of gold tinted, and I am aware because I was running low on silver, so I had to substitute that in with gold. But I'm going to use some extra gray highlights and colors, so hopefully it'll tone it down a little bit. But also, I was mostly just thinking, it's silver enough, so I hope that it looks fine. And of course, I want the weapons to match in somewhat similar colors, so that's what I'm gonna also paint the machete, the same goldish silver grays and blacks, because I feel like it would look off and it would be incredibly noticeable if the colors were just very obviously different. But something that I didn't show is that for some reason these silver paints, it took forever. It took like 3 layers or 4 to get a solid coat, which I don't understand why, but it's not even that big of a deal, because I can just start moving on to painting everything else. Starting with Bob's boots, which I don't know why I'm starting from his boots, but it's not even that big a deal. I think I was trying to just work my way up, but then again, I'm sure that that's going to go out of order, because I'm working on his pants, which is actually not out of order, but whatever. And I wanted him to kind of look like Santa, so this is where that takes place. I plan to use more of Santa's actual colors instead of Rambo's colors, which are more just military greens, followed by his brown belt and the brown sash going across his chest, which is going to be holding his gun, or at least the strap that, if it was real, would be holding his gun, followed by painting his big arms. I'm just trying to get the first layer of paint on most of these, because I figured, especially for skin, it struggled to mix it together, so if I just get a base coat of everything flesh colored, it'll be a little bit easier to go back instead of having to cross match paints. But even though I did finish painting the base coat for the face, I don't want to paint any more details yet, so I can paint the bandana and then paint his hair in an off-white, because I was aiming for blonde, but I wasn't aiming for like an old man white, which is a little hard to see, but I think you guys can see it, kind of. But don't worry, I'll make it a little bit more obvious when I use some even more off-white to act as the highlights. And now that I think about it, I'm just making Dante at this point, but if he had blonde hair instead of white hair. But we're just gonna look over that fact, because I'm gonna paint his tank top in this light gray color instead of just a perfect white, so I can do some highlights in white, which I think looks better than trying to do gray and shadows and just having a completely white t-shirt before then weathering the straps and the belt, because I'm trying to fit as much detail as possible into the sculpture. To act as weathering, I can dust a bunch of lighter red on the pants and the bandana, because I want this to also kind of look like light is shining down, and obviously light would make the part of the pants and bandana lighter, but I'm also using it as battle damage / wear and tear, so it kind of fits in perfectly. And I can do the same thing with the shoes, using a dark gray on top to make it look like light is shining down, before then doing the same thing on a belt buckle, trying to make a small blend of light gray and dark gray. Now that we can finally add some detail, I can paint some highlights all over the arms to make sure they look extra big and shiny, I guess. I don't know what I'm really going for, except I'm just trying to make the sculpture not look flat, which also helps the face, because it was desperately needing some extra layers of paint. Now that it looks okay, I can paint the eyes in off camera, and I can start moving on to the rest of the build, like attaching the little backpack on the side of his belt, followed by the gun to his back, which I know is going to be in just a second, but I'm taking forever to show the video. And I was praying, basically, with the amount of super glue that I had, because I was running low, and I think that it was enough, just barely though. Followed by putting in the painted cigar off camera. I know, I can't believe I missed this step, but I don't know, it's just a little cigar. Followed by painting Santa's body bag, which is just a standard dark red instead of the slightly lighter red. This one was also incredibly annoying. I had to paint this thing like 5 or 6 times to just get it a solid layer of paint, before then dusting a lighter red all over it to act as highlights instead of shadows. With that out of the way, I can now make a base, which starts with this square and this rock that I'm painting gray, because I made this rock off camera because I figured my big hands were going to get in the way and I didn't want to cut myself, before then spreading a bunch of paint all over the base, which is just going to be this fake snow, which I can spread deliberately all over the entire base. And luckily, I had just enough. I was so happy about this. And I can spread some of it around to make it look like the bag is being pushed and dragged through the snow. And then I can mess up the rest of the snow around the base to make it just look like more snow-like, I guess. Followed by some red blood from the body bag, because that's the Grinch. As one of the final steps, I can dry brush the snow in some even lighter white, because I made the snow a little bit darker so I could add some highlights to make it look realistic, followed by a little bit of black for the base. And now it's time for the reveal. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more Santa Rambo content like this in the future. Alright, see you guys in the next video. Bye.